Welcome to another session of Just Me. Today we're joined by Vicki Wusche, who is going to tell you a little bit about herself. Welcome, Vicki.
Hello, Sid. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
You're very welcome. So tell us about you and what you do and all that kind of good stuff, please.
Okay, so the short answer is most people will know me as someone who invests in property. I used to be called the property mermaid because I started investing in property as a way to have the lifestyle that I wanted, which was to scuba dive all the warm waters of the world. But actually,
Wow.
actually, what that means when you look at it is that I want to live the life that I want to live. I've worked out the amount of money that it's going to take me to live the life I want to live. And then I've worked out how I can create that income using only the amount of time I want to so that I can live the life that I want to live. And that's what I do to help people. I help people first identify the lives they want to live, work out how much it costs to live that life, and then work out how they can afford to live that life.
I love that. And how did you come across that? I mean, you didn't suddenly wake up one morning and go, right, this is what I'm going to do, because that's a lot to
Uh,
kind of work out.
yeah, I mean, whenever you say anything on these things, it sounds so glib, doesn't it? But it's actually, 10, 20
Yeah.
years of hindsight. I think the trigger, if you like. So there were two triggers. One was the end of my marriage, which was way back in the early 90s. And I was left with two little girls. And I came out of
Oh no.
that, again, with hindsight, understanding that I knew nothing about money. Somehow, my
Wow.
parents had bought their house, had moved into my grandparents' house. My father ran a business, my mother ran a business. We didn't speak money. I didn't understand it as the tool that it is. Um, During my marriage, and I'm going to say we, but I had no active role in this. We didn't pay the rent, the landlord kicked us out. We bought a house, we didn't pay the mortgage, we got evicted. I was homeless the week before my first baby was born and went into hospital with preeclampsia, which is high blood pressure. And all of
Gosh.
this
Yes.
because, and I do feel that this was a very classic female stereotype, and I was living it. My partner, my male partner, and this could happen in any relationship, to women, to men, it could be the man that doesn't pay attention. I
Mm.
I abdicated financial responsibility to my other half. And so that was the first big lesson. I wasn't going to do that again. So
Mm.
when I left the marriage, I ended up on benefits. And man, that is a wake up call. And such a small amount
Wow.
of money, and the lives of two basically babies to feed. And I had an incredible supportive family, don't get me wrong. If anything had gone wrong, they would have stepped in, but I didn't want that.
Mm.
I wanted to take, and I'm going to start using the word control here. So I wanted to start taking
Mm.
control. Did off to university, all very glib here, sorry, but off to university, then started a career as a university lecturer, then started doing amazing government funded projects and working with New Deal for communities and areas of deprivation and working
Oh,
with
brilliant.
refugees and all of this sort of stuff. And then made redundant,
Wow.
another anxiety moment of a lack of control. And so I decided that I was never going to let anybody control my life or my finances again. And that's how it sort of all comes together as a sandwich.
Brilliant. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. So, where were you born? What sort of area of the UK?
I was born in a village called Raisbury, which is sort of on the, where would it be? West side of Heathrow. Um,
Okay.
and then I lived around Raisbury all my childhood. Then we moved to Uxbridge, which was a few miles down the road. Then when I got married, and this is an interesting thing, the maybe deliberate act, but to isolate. So we ended up moving out to Reading. I might be imagining that in a different way, but we moved out to Reading, a long way. I know it's only 30 miles, but actually, in those days, all those millions of years ago, driving 30 miles, which only takes half an hour, was like a lifetime somehow. It was like the
Yes.
furthest I've ever been. And now we're back here, just sort of on the Windsor Surrey border, up the top of Englefield Green, near Royal Holloway University. So yeah,
All
I've just
right.
been a whole sort of slightly West London girl all my life.
And what have you learned along the way? Because that's, I mean, I'm not going to ask
Mm.
you your age because that's just impolite. But I mean, you're obviously there's a couple of decades,
Yes.
possibly three.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I
I
like
mean,
you.
you're very welcome. So what have you learned along the way? I mean, what are the key kind of lessons that you've picked up?
Whoa. Wow. That would be a 15-hour podcast, but I will pick out a couple of brief ones. Well, because there are so many lessons. I mean, if you're not learning
Mm,
lessons on a daily basis, you need to sort of wake up and get out of bed, really. Lessons. I think that the key thing for me, the master lessons, if you like, is everything I have in my life is a result of the actions and decisions I've taken. And if there's anything in my life that I'm not happy with, that's equally as a result of the actions and the decisions that I possibly haven't taken. And I can do anything, I can be anything, I can have anything. I just need to decide what it is and set my mind to it. And that's
can
almost
I?
a mantra too. Mm.
I love that. Can I just? I'm really sorry. I know it's very rude to
No,
jump in, but I love that. So does that mean that you take absolute responsibility for everything that you do?
yes, that doesn't mean to say that I don't have sulky, moody days where, I really want to blame someone, and
Mhm.
I don't tend to blame much because I don't think that blame is helpful, but I do try and
Okay.
justify at times. But I am alert to my own justifications. You know, don't
Mm,
start that again, Vicky. So I don't really have negative chatter in my head. So people talk about this, and I decided that I didn't want that. So I went through a whole process. I learned about NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming.
okay.
Um, and that's about when you get that negative voice come up, it's because your body is and your mind is trying to protect you and alert you to something. So have a look at it, see whether that actually is true and correct in the world that you are now. And if it's not right,
Mm.
then have a chat with your own self, your own mind, and go, yeah, I know that you think that that's important to me now, but maybe you haven't understood this is my goal and this is what I need to be focused on. And if you've got things that you can find to support me in that goal, then that's great. Please alert me to those. But that thing that you're telling me about, like you weren't any good at school, that's not relevant anymore because I'm so far away from school that telling me that I didn't get the right O level at school isn't relevant to me now that I'm 10, 20, 30, 40 years later.
But it's hard not to keep that residual stuff, isn't it? I mean, people
Mm.
call it residual muscle, negative thinking, all that kind of stuff. It's difficult though, isn't it? Because I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm feeling tired or whatever, I sort of fall back into that nee, 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 pity me, whatever. So it's hard, isn't it? And I think for some people, look at COVID and gosh, I mean, I feel very lucky to live where I do, and have a garden and stuff. But, people who are in, sheltered accommodation or are homeless or whatever, I mean, it must be so hard not to try and break that cycle.
Oh, definitely. I mean, total sympathy to everybody who has struggled in whatever way through the first
Mm,
half of 2020. It's been a unique, I hope, as in one off, but I doubt it, but it's certainly an unusual year. I think the key thing here is to become self aware. Maybe that's again a simplification of it. But I
lovely.
said, I'm being a bit glib about this. I don't mean to be glib about it, but it's been it's been a lesson. So if you think about riding a bike, when you're first little, you've got your stabilizers on it, and then maybe mum or dad is or an older sibling is running along holding the back of the seat, and then finally you're on two wheels, and then you get a bigger bike, and suddenly you're training for the Olympics, and then you're in the Olympics, and then there's a big crash and you fall off. And sometimes you fall off because you hit the bump. Sometimes you fall off because somebody in front of you fell off and you tripped over them, but you just get back up. You don't then
Mm,
never ride a bike again. You just get back on. And that's the same with this
mm,
idea of the self talk. If you hear it, you have a conversation with it. I also carry out some exercises, and I do this with all my clients as well. Gratitude. So first thing in the morning, what are the
beautiful,
three things that you are grateful for? And then
beautiful.
last thing at night, what are the three things that you are grateful for? And if you fill your mind with positive stuff, then you're not leaving enough room for the negative stuff.
Yes, and isn't it interesting by doing that? I'm very much like you. I do exactly the same, and it's interesting that it becomes that habit, doesn't it?
Mm.
Of well, that's what I look for, and that's what I want to foster. But it's difficult at the beginning, isn't it? Because you kind of, I mean, I remember somebody saying to me, yes, just years and years ago, you know, 5 things that you're grateful for, and I was like, "Oh, I don't even think I could think of one." And
Yeah.
now it's hard not to think of 1,000 in a
Yes.
way.
Yes.
But it's difficult to. But as you say, that once you start doing that, that just becomes a natural part of who you are, really.
Oh, definitely. But it's that exercise, isn't it? It's another
Yes.
habit. I mean, they're habits, aren't they? And I
Mhm.
think what you can do is you can have habits that don't support you, and you can choose to have habits that do support you. And one needs
I
to
like that.
find out the habits that support you. And for me, the big thing, like your mission, I mean, goodness me, you've got such an amazing mission. My mission is to
Thank
help people really understand about finances, because I don't believe we're taught about it in school. So many
you. Brilliant.
people don't like maths, when really maths and money is the application of maths. And if you don't like maths, how can you ever be good at money? And we need to be good at money because we live in a society that wants us to be in debt, because that's the way to. We could do the conspiratorial enslave us, or we can just do the functional. That's how
Mm.
we live in a materialistic world. We want it now and then we'll pay for it later, as opposed to our grandparents who would have saved up for it first and then bought it afterwards.
Mm.
And if you don't understand money, you're accumulating debt that you have no understanding of, because you don't like the maths. We just need to get over that. And so many people don't understand about interest. So many people just don't
Mm.
even think about the fundamentals of, if you only have £1,000 a month, you can only spend £1,000 a month. You can't continually spend 1,500 a month and think that that's going to go on okay. It's
Yes.
not. It doesn't.
So, 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 what obstacles have you kind of encountered? I mean, you mentioned about getting divorced and being on your own, being sort of unemployed and claiming benefits. So those obstacles that you faced along the way, what has helped you through those? Because they're tough, aren't they? I
Mhm.
mean, so where's your inner resolve come from?
Um, I was talking about this with someone the other day, and this is not to downplay the role of my family. My family have been
Mhm.
incredible for me. I've been, again, it's another thing to sometimes take for granted, but actually be very grateful for my mother, my father, my sister, and then the role of friends, although I didn't have many at the time because we'd been a bit isolated. During my redundancy, again, it's the people around you that step up and support you. Well, if you're lucky enough to have the right people around you. But I would say the
Yes.
thing that really drew me forward is almost a maternal instinct. And I was having this conversation and wondering how my life would have been different if I hadn't had the children. Now, obviously, it would have been
Mm.
vastly different if I hadn't had the children, who are now grown women in their own right, and I've got two grandchildren. That
Oh, lovely. Oh,
it's it's that thing that is more important than anything. And for me, it was, I gave birth to these two human beings. I have a responsibility to them. I want to be the
brilliant.
best that I can be in order that they can be the best that they can be. Because I didn't think that if I was lounging on the sofa, eating crisps, smoking weed, and not working, that my children would then have the best start to go out and have the the life that they wanted. I didn't think that that role model would help them. But if I was a woman that was doing her best to manage the money, doing her best to hold down a job, doing her best, and remember, doing her best doesn't mean to say doing it perfectly, doing her best to keep the house clean, to keep them fed, to keep them clothed, then they would see someone who worked for what they wanted, and then they would know that they could work for what they wanted. And if you don't have children, you can pick something else that you use as that point to drive you forward.
That's really nice. I love that, doing her best. I'm gonna write that down. That's so. And you're right. You don't get it right all the time, and you know, but it's that aim, isn't it? As you mentioned, that habit of I'm going to do my best. I love your thing about a role model. I think that's so important for our children and for our society and communities. I think that's really, really lovely. And do you? I mean, so when things do get tough, do you go back to that and think, I need to do my best? Um, is that a continuous mantra that you have?
Yeah, um that morphed into something really, and I think it was probably a trait I had at school, probably driven by my dad. But this idea of doing your best, I've given it to you in a very nice way there. So, I want to do my best for the children, but actually, I am horrifically competitive.
Are
Um,
you?
I will compete with you, and you don't even know that we're in competition. And
Ah, I
then I
love it.
will be delighted that I won, and it drove me forward. Um, yeah, I'm currently competing with my family who didn't want to compete in a get fit in 21 day thing, um, because we need to get fit before the kids go back to school. I put it on our family WhatsApp group, and they all went no, and I went okay. Just because you're not going to do it doesn't mean to say I'm not
That's
going to
brilliant.
beat you. And so I do I do
Oh,
that
oh
quite a
my
bit.
God, that's
So it's I'm driven, and I think sometimes people meet me or hear about me, or that first contact you have, and they find me scary. And I remember being told this, and I don't often bring this word up, but I used to speak at an event, and this guy would introduce me every time as being scary. And actually, what it started to
whoa.
make me do was temper the way that I behaved, because
Okay.
I thought I'm coming on too strong, people won't like me. But actually, whether people like you or not is not important if you're living. Now, hold on, there's a caveat to this, of course, but it's not important if you're living the life that you want to live, as long as the people who don't like you are actually your detractors and not people who are in your family. And because there's a saying, isn't there, and I always get this the wrong way round. The people that matter in your life care, and the people who care don't matter. I think it's that way round. So what it was saying was, if
Okay.
it's the people who are important in your life care about you, and they matter, and their opinions matter. But anybody who doesn't really care about you, doesn't love you, their opinions don't matter. So it's about being aware of that, and being told that I'm scary then became a negative thing. And what I've had to do is work on that word to say, no, actually, that was that man's opinion. So there's another a mantra there,
Yes.
that everybody sees the world through their own eyes.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, he chose to see me as scary. And that probably said more about him than it did about me. What I actually am is, and not 100% of the time, I have my very, unfocused days, but when I'm in the zone, I am focused and I am determined. So when I have something that I want to pay attention to, I'm on it. And if I haven't got anything that I want to pay attention to, then I'm sunbathing in the garden, or I've just become this lockdown gardener. So we've got vegetable patches
I
and
love it.
tomatoes to pick and all sorts.
How wonderful. And what advice would you, I mean, if you could go back to your younger self, those early days, the kind of the insecure teenage years, what advice would you give your younger self?
I nearly choked on my glass of water then. I don't think I
Oh,
had insecure child. I I lived this very sort of naive and privileged life, and I strolled through completely insecure
wow.
until I met my then husband, my the man that I then married, and that's when I learned about insecurities. But I would say it's about trusting your gut, and you can do the whole, if you want to go into the research, and now scientists are starting to understand that there are, and I
Yeah.
don't have this all exactly correct, but a nerve center in your stomach that actually can react quicker than your mind can react. And so the gut will act in different ways for different people. It can be the butterflies that you feel. Remember, the butterflies aren't necessarily fear, they could be excitement. They're just a message. and you need to look at what that message is and then interpret it. Don't always assume that it's fear. But equally, some people can get a bad stomach, all sorts of stuff. So trust your gut and know that the answer will come clear. And then it might not come clear for years. So sometimes I think something and I go, yeah, I've thought that before, haven't I? And you might get the same message a couple of times and you don't act on it. And so, I think the world conspires to give you the message again and give you another chance and maybe give you the message a third time. So look for these messages. And then when you start to see a pattern with the messages, act. Because if you
I
don't
love that.
act on that opportunity, the opportunity will move on to somebody else.
I love that. And would you? I mean, is that advice that you would give to? I mean, I struggle with for young people really because it's hard out there for them. The whole education system. We spoke about this before we started
Mm,
recording, but it's tough. The education system. Yeah, it's based on industrial model, blah blah blah, whatever. But it's like they've still got to get through it. We've still got
yeah,
to help them through. So would you give that advice to them as well? That go with your gut, trust your instincts. Like you. Well, I love what you said earlier about being determined, and yeah, you can call that being competitive or whatever, but is that the type of thing that you would advise young people to kind of
absolutely.
do?
Today's the day the A-level results come out, and what I did when I
Yes.
got up this morning was put a message into one of our family groups to our niece who's expecting her results. And of course, this is normally a tense time for young people, but
Mm,
actually is a ridiculous time for young people today who are going to get results on exams that they haven't even taken,
yeah.
calculated by a computer based on the performance of the school last year. It's such nonsense. And what I know is that I did relatively okay in my O levels. Um, didn't get any A's in my O levels, and then went on, and that shows how old I am, and then went on to do my A levels and
Okay.
basically failed all three. I think I got a U, an E, and a D,
Oh,
something like that. That did not make a difference to the life I have now. It's so irrelevant. And I was
brilliant,
lucky, right? I was lucky that
brilliant.
I lived in a time when you were not forced, and I use that word very consideredly, you're not forced to go straight from aged 18 doing A levels straight into university, which, sorry, is another pile of debt that society wants you to have
Yeah.
as part of the maybe conspiring to control you thing. I didn't. I went out, and the Saturday job I had turned into a full time job working at Marks and Spencer's. I hated it. I love Marks and Spencer's. I was not cut out to be a Saturday girl. I was not cut out to be a sales tidying the sock girl. I worked my way round. I wanted to be on the management program, but Marks and Spencer said that you had to do 2 years on the sales floor tidying socks or whatever before you were allowed to go on the management program. And I wasn't going to wait that long. So because I lived near the airport and that's sort of like a major employer, it just stood out as a beacon. I applied for a job, then I went to the airport. And what I did all the time was I learned about relationships with other people in work, which is so different from school. I learned what I was good at. I learned that I'm very detailed. I'm strange. I'm very detailed and very organized, but also a leader and a visionary. So I'm an
Brilliant.
unusual employee and very difficult to control. So, working through different jobs and again looking at how my chatty personality doesn't doesn't suit working a working environment. Coming out with your
Mm.
ideas to an employer isn't necessarily what the employer wants. They want you to sit down, be quiet, and do what you're paid for. They don't want you to go, but why don't we do it this way? Asking questions. I've always asked too many questions. And I think young people now are amazing because they've come through the whole, using their thumbs to send text messages. And now they swipe with their flicky fingers. They've got the
Yeah.
internet, for heaven's sake. They can be literally anything. We are inventing job titles. Vlogger, for heaven's sake. Influencer, for heaven's sake. What is that all about? And so, this set of results is some organization labeling you for their own purposes. Do not allow that to define you. Oh, I feel quite.
Oh, that's strong words. I love that.
Yeah, I do. That
That's
makes me feel
wonderful.
quite emotional because I feel so sorry for the
Yes,
young
of course.
people that are going to not have the right support over this day and next few weeks and are going to think that their paths are set and they are not set by this set of letters or numbers. It's nonsense that you can be anything that you want. Please be anything that you want.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because, like you, I did A levels too, and you do think that your world falls apart or is shaped or whatever by the opening of an envelope, and
I know. And
crazy as it is.
and you want the
Mm.
irony of this? 10 years after failing my A levels, I had a first class honours and a master's degree.
Oh, I love that. So, Vicky, what legacy would you like to leave behind?
Oh, what would I like to leave behind? I honestly don't know. I think it is a family tree that are full of love and happiness and joy. I think I spoke to you before this, didn't I? Over COVID, I have invented a new education system. I've solved the homeless problem. I literally I have been basically a locked-in prime minister, creating all of these things, new political systems, everything. And I just think actually the one thing that I can really do is make sure that I do whatever I can for my family, for myself too, so that I can be happy and I can be happy with my partner, because if I'm happy and I'm happy with my partner Bob, then that also means that my family will be happy for me, and then I can be happy for them, and just pass on the love, and then hope that what we have starts to ripple out. During COVID, I really thought that there was so much positivity with that, coming out and clapping and chatting with your
Mm.
neighbors, people starting to see what was important to them. I'd love for
Mm.
everyone to identify what's important to you and then work out how you can afford to live that life. And I put it that way round because we do have to pay attention to the money, but find out what's important to you, whether it's your children, it could be your business, it could be keeping your employees in work, um, it could be your health, it could be your lockdown vegetable garden. What matters to you, and how do you want to live your life? And then work out how much money it's going to take for you to live that life, and then work out how to earn that and live the life that you want to live. And then
That's
no one's in
brilliant.
control, just you.
I love that. Love that. So, what one word would you use to describe yourself?
Chatty, chatty, too
No,
chatty. Yeah,
no,
chatty. I'd
definitely
go
not
with
too
chatty.
chatty.
I was going to actually use a more
No.
derogatory phrase, but I'm going to go with chatty.
It's really nice. Oh, it's nice. I like it, but it's nice to have chatty people, don't you think? I think
Yeah,
it's nice.
well, certainly it can be. And the thing is, I am actually quite introvert when we go out into larger
Yeah.
social events, because I find that walking up and starting a conversation with a stranger is really difficult. And yet,
Yeah.
what, 40 minutes ago, Sid, you were a stranger?
Mm.
And so it's about sometimes connecting with an individual, and from that individual conversation, moving on to speak to a second person and the third person. And before you know it, you've spoken to 10 people. But actually, when you go into a room and there are 10 people there and you have to pick one, that's quite daunting. But put me on a
That's hard.
stage. Yeah, but put me on a stage in front of 500 people and I don't have a problem.
You become very chatty.
Mm.
Vicky, it's been wonderful talking to you, and thank you very much for sharing
Oh, thank you, Sid.
your thoughts of life. It's been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, and I wish you very well for the future.
Thank you. You too.